long distance hike training for the Te Araroa Trail in New Zealand, which is a through hike. If you have a big backpacking adventure coming up and you'd like some tips and tricks to ensure that you set yourself up for success, then this is the video for you. Today, I want to share with you an in-depth look at my 10-month physical training program, which I've been implementing since mid-January this year. I've poured a heap of planning time into ensuring I trained as efficiently as possible and have been fortunate to be supported by some mighty impressive elite athlete medical professionals, which is great because I absolutely don't have any training in this area. Hi, I'm Jenny and I'm dedicated to adventure. This year, I've been busy preparing my mind and body to through hike solo some 1,400 kilometres in the South Island of New Zealand along the spectacular Te Araroa Trail. As an older hiker and one managing a complex medical situation, my training has required a heap of input from a broad range of professionals who are at the top of their game. I've had tremendous support from a senior advanced elite athlete physio and also a senior advanced athlete exercise physiologist. Oh, and a sports nutritionist. So I'm really excited to share what I've learned because boy, it's been a fascinating journey. My mindset around finding the time to train consistently is that I made a personal contract with myself that I would put my training first before my workday begins. I aim to never break that contract with myself unless, of course, I'm ill or injured. Therefore, I found it necessary to get up at 4 a.m. on each training day and smash the training out before I started work. Over the 10 months, my commitment never wavered. However, I did experience having to manage a rocky bit because training is never a straight linear line like that. It always has a little bit of this going in it as you progress. I found it easier to break up my 10 months training into blocks, some of which you'll see today were created by myself based on my own personal fitness at the time, and the remainder was very carefully put together by my sports physio and exercise physiologist team. So let's talk block 1, which was for me weeks 1 to 4. I spent 4 by about 1.5 to 2 hour sessions, and I called this my walk, hike, mobility training plus pre and post stretching program. And during this phase, I wasn't wearing a weight vest, just simply walking. Block 2, weeks 5 to 8. Well, at this stage, I started including using a weight vest. I bought mine from Rebel Sports and it goes up to 20 kilos, but I never exceed anything more than 16, which is definitely my upper limit. So my initial load was 10 kilos and I wore that for only 5 kilometers, but across very hilly terrain. Very slowly, I progressed to 14 kilos, again, only across 5 kilometers, and once again, over hilly terrain. I did that by increasing the weight in my weight vest by 1 kilo each week, and I found that worked well for me. At this stage, I also added in my strength training program, which was formulated by my exercise physiologist, and it consisted of two 45-minute sessions a week. Now, I'm not going to go into specifics because for every individual it's very different, and I do encourage you really strongly to work with your own medical team no matter what your circumstances are. But as an older hiker, some of the elements in that strength training program included, of course, warming up, stretching. I worked on my upper back and shoulders, particularly because I don't have any sensation in my feet. I'm quite often having to look down, most of the time actually, to ensure that I have correct foot placement, which places a lot of strain on my shoulders, upper back, neck. And to do that, I used TheraBands, and I also incorporated 3 kilo dumbbell exercises. That was the weight that I initially started with. And very importantly, in my case, I also included a fairly significant amount of ankle and feet strength exercises. Because my elite athlete, sports physio and exercise physiologist were located about a 45-minute drive away from home, I chose to perform my strength training program at home. Some might be able to use a gym, but for me, the drive to and forth was something that I needed to restrain to once every fortnight. So all of the strength training program actually happened in this room. I tied my TheraBands to the stainless steel pole there, and yes, all of the exercises were done in this room. Block 4, which was weeks 9 and 10, was a bit of a tricky one for me because I chose to have a complex right ankle reconstruction as part of my preparation for the Te Araroa. I'd been doing classical ballet for 15 years, 8 years on point back at the ages between 3 to 18, and along with some other adventure activities and hiking and a prior ankle reconstruction which had failed, the instability of my ankle was pretty significant, and I certainly didn't want to go into the Te Araroa with that situation. So following the ankle reconstruction, I had 2 weeks of complete non-weight bearing, and in hospital, of course, they gave me physio exercises, which I did, and I continued as much of my upper body strength training program as I possibly could. And whilst most people are in a moon boot for 6 weeks, the surgeon got to know me pretty well, pretty quickly, along with the support team of the physio and the exercise physiologist. So they kept me in a moon boot for 10 weeks. Block 5, weeks 11 to 14. Well, I was allowed to start walking in my moon boot 1 kilometre 4 times a day. And whilst I was walking, I was using my 1 kilo weighted gloves and also my trekking poles, walking on bitumen around our neighbourhood and keeping it fairly flat, not a lot of ascent and descent. And as I said, 4 short sessions a day. During that time, of course, I was carefully monitoring the swelling in my right ankle, and so I had my ankle elevated for about 80% of the time in between each session, and iced and used compression and all of that good stuff. And my strength training program continued. It was a bit of a modified program, but we learnt to incorporate a broad range of exercises in a non-weight bearing situation 3 times weekly. Block 6, weeks 15 to 18. I continued walking in the moon boot using weighted gloves and trekking poles. Just like I had before, my sessions increased to 3 45-minute sessions 3 times weekly, but where the increase is that I progressed from achieving 5 kilometres to 8 kilometres a day. But the difference is during this particular block, I started incorporating a range of arm movements whilst I was using my trekking poles, which meant that I was able to work on balance as well and flexibility for my particular body. Of course, strength training continued, and excitingly now I was allowed to do some weight bearing strength training. So that included some simple exercises like squats, and in my case I used a children's knobbly ball behind the middle of my back against a wall, and I also incorporated some bent arm raises to sides using just a 2 kilo dumbbell. And then I still had a broad range of non-weight bearing exercises, and some of those incorporated exercises like lying on the very edge of my bed and using my horizontal rises with a 2 kilo dumbbell, repetitions of that, and on the bed, on the edge of the bed, modified kneel squats, and also modified glute kneel squats. This was a really good block because I also incorporated a range of progressing to 4 kilo dumbbell upper body exercises and a mix of weight bearing and non-weight bearing TheraBand exercises with a range of different bands. And also, very importantly, I continued my ankle and feet strengthening program. And as for how all of this worked out, is I made sure that I had 2 consecutive days of training each week, which my body really appreciated. And during this time, you know, there was I started getting my brain used to making sure that I was analysing and constant re-evaluation of my right ankle and trying to make sure I was aware of any other niggly problems starting to come up. And so I was still continuing to elevate ice using compression, and this time I started using a U-shaped foam bit around my ankle as well, and compression socks. Block 7, weeks 19 to 21, and on week 22 I had a 5-day family holiday at Fraser Island. So I took a break for the most part from training then and limited it to walk training. And this was a really exciting week for me because I got to transition from my moon boot, say goodbye to that, and into an ankle brace. And my goal was to, as far as my walk sessions were concerned, to increase to 3 by 60-minute sessions 3 times weekly, which meant a total in kilometrage each day, ranging from 13.6 to 15 kilometres a day, and now across more hilly terrain. I continued, of course, to progress my strength training program. I changed up one exercise each week as guided by my elite athlete exercise physiologist, and as far as the physio was concerned, thanks to my sports physio, we continued progressing in that area too, and we're working on both ankles at the same time. Block 8, which was weeks 23 to 27. Now I could finally progress to walking out in nature. So my walk/hike training program started to incorporate stair training as well. I progressed to incorporate natural trail, but it was limited to about 45% of each session. And on that natural terrain, I started including very small, say 20 to 25 metre sections of rocky, sandy, muddy
go through the mud?
Terrain,
Splash,
and an
splash,
increase
splash.
of
Yes,
ascent and
yes,
descent
yes, it's
walking.
fun. Splash, splash.
Also, whilst I was on that terrain, I started introducing stair work, and they were all done as single stairs. Initially amount of 400 stairs, which increased over weeks 23 to 27 to 1,500 stairs. And I increased the distance each day from 10 kilometres right up to 15 kilometres a day. And I wasn't wearing a weight vest at this stage for weeks 23 and 24. But in weeks, let me see, 25, 26, 27, I started using a weight vest, and my ankle surgeon said I could start with 10 kilos in my weight vest and increase by 1 kilo each week. Block 9, weeks 28 to 31. Well, I felt like I'd been finally let out of jail, and I could now commence day hike training. So by this stage I'd progressed to wearing no brace on my right ankle, and I could start doing day hikes over varied natural terrain, which included terrain like rainforest, mountain hikes, dirt, and I started including a little bit of creek crossing training. And as for the time for my day hikes, they ranged from, at the beginning, 3 hours and progressed to 6 hours. And the distance ranged from 5.3 kilometres right up to 17 kilometre day hikes. And places that I went to were places in Brisbane, like, or around Brisbane, like Mount Glorious, and also Mount Nagungun in the Glasshouse Mountains, and a Noggara Reserve, and a funny little track called Hell Hole. And I also started continued progressing my retraining the brain training aspect, because I don't have any sensation in my feet. From now, up till now, I've been focusing solely on correct foot placement, but now came the time where I wanted to challenge my brain to see if I could hike with a friend, and I ended up hiking with Nikki from Gnarly Adventures, who lives not far away, and I challenged my brain by seeing if it could do two things at once, focusing on correct foot placement and just careful gait and pace control, nose breathing control, but also incorporating chatting to a great new friend. During this time though, I continued the constant self-evaluation, and as I said, the neuroplasticity training, and continued to wear my compression socks, and after each hike, ice elevate ankles and also knees. And as far as the strength training program concerned, that also continued to progress. And as far as the working with the sports physio, who was absolutely incredible, we started looking at other areas of my body. You know, I'd had a bit of an issue with the left knee previously, so that is naturally my weaker knee. My right knee is my stronger knee. They're both good, but we worked more on the left knee, and with the exercise physiologist we concentrated a bit more progressing the neck exercises as well, using a TheraBand. So next up in the 6-week block of elevation and summit training came Mount Mitchell, which is also out in the scenic rim. Most of my mountains were out in the scenic rim, so Cordeaux was out there, Mount Mitchell, and also Mount Maroon, Mount Edwards. So with Mount Mitchell, my mountain man decided to join me on that day, and I don't know what it is, but oh my God, the weather was absolutely appalling on that day, so good on him for joining me. As far as distance, we clocked 18.3 kilometres. Elevation gain and loss was 638 metres. Again, grade 4, which is harder. It's considered slightly harder than the Mount Cordeaux hike. I don't know whether I find it harder, but that's the stats. Duration, we spent 8 hours with 13 kilos in the backpack. Once again, focusing on the time spent with the weight on the back, not the pace. We took long breaks, rain, howling winds the whole time. You'll see that in the upcoming videos, because I have filmed an individual video for Mount Cordeaux, one for Mount Mitchell, one for Mount Maroon. So looking at the rate of perceived exertion scores again, for Mount Mitchell, I found it way easier. So my score on that day was only 6 out of 10. Brain tiredness rate of perceived exertion was an 8 out of 10. Once again, that's just managing correct foot placement. You know, it is really tricky hiking without any sensation in my feet due to spinal cord damage, but I'm doing really well. And from a neuroplasticity side of things, it is harder when you hike with someone else, no matter what their attitude is, because part of your brain is thinking about them, talking with them, whatever it is. But my mountain man was really valuable that day. He also helped me film that episode. And then in between, after Mount Mitchell, I continued doing more laps of Mount Nagungun, and I did that, actually, I forgot to mention, but I did that in between Mount Cordeaux to Mitchell, so there's Nagungun in there, and then in between Mount Mitchell and Mount Edwards, there was Mount Nagungun laps again, working my way up to doing those 5, and then finally we come to Mount Maroon, which was the most challenging summit that I did. I had done it back in 2020 with a great bunch from Adventure Professionals with Glenn Azar, and on that time I found it really hard. You know, Mount Maroon is a complex, scrambly type, very steep summit type mountain, and I was hoping that on this particular situation, with the added strength training that I'll be doing, that I'd find it easier. And unfortunately for me, I found it harder, and part of the reason was that I hadn't slept well the night before. I'd probably had maybe 3 hours of broken sleep. It was a chronic pain situation, flare up, but I still went ahead with the hike. So anyway, the stats for Mount Maroon. 966 metres above sea level is the height of Mount Maroon. The distance is only 6 kilometres return, so it's an out and back. Pack weight on that day, I substantially dropped the pack weight because I hadn't slept well, because my chronic pain, spinal pain levels were higher, so I reduced it to 11.5 kilos, which turned out to be far too much. Thank goodness I had the foresight of packing most of the weight with water weight, so I was able to dump water out as I needed to, and by the end of the hike I only had 6.5 kilos in the backpack. So Mount Maroon is grade 5, which is the hardest grading of our hiking gradings. You know, they start at a grade 1 and go up to grade 5, and after that you have climbing grades. So grade 5, very hard. Time usually takes most hikers 4 to 6 hours. Once again, I'm concentrating on not injuring myself. I'm concentrating on maintaining a slow and steady pace so that I'm not perspiring too much, so that my breathing isn't getting out of control, so that and achieving all my goals as far as injury and enjoying the heck out of the hike, having several breaks. I think I had 2 longer breaks, and at the summit I actually laid on the ground and had my feet and legs elevated up in that position with rocks behind for about a good 30 minutes while I ate and hydrated and did my safety check-ins. But anyway, my time on that day, most people take 4 to 6 hours. Mine with breaks was 8.5 hours. That included 7 hours of walking. So you can see on that particular hike, I was really, really slow. So the rate of perceived exertion scores, once again, this time brain was 10 out of 10, completely maxed out. I did very, very well on that day, not to sustain any injuries. I didn't slip, jar, stumble, fall, none of that, but my brain was absolutely maxed out on concentrating on correct foot placement, because Mount Maroon, it is pretty slippery as far as the dirt underneath your feet. There's plenty of small rocks to roll on with your joggers, lots of rock scrambly bits. There's a natural water course that you have to pull yourself way up and over giant rocks. Not as big as Cradle Mountain rocks, of course, but still significant rocks, and definitely step ups of more like 40 to 45 to 60 centimeters and up to probably 3 feet. And on the way down, my strategy for descending on a lot of those really, really big drops was to lower myself down on my bottom, drop my feet down, stand up and continue down that way. And I did that for a very long time. Endurance and physicality rate of perceived exertion score was very unfortunately a 9 out of 10, and I put that down to having really poor sleep the night before. And I suspect had I slept really well, the difference in the score would have been 8 out of 10, so it would have still been way up there for me. And then I added in on that particular day an initial score for mobility and flexibility, because I am fused from the waist down, L2, 3, 4, 5, S1, both SI joints, and I have 2 22 centimeter rods in my back and 12 7.5 centimeter screws, or is it 10? Might be 10 7.5 centimeter screws. I try not to think about that stuff anymore, but my mobility and flexibility score on that day was a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10. Now I was really disappointed in that score because in the past I had considered myself quite flexible still, and I still am in a range of situations, but on that particular day my flexibility and reach wasn't that great. There's 1 or 2 particular rock that you have to overcome on the way up and the way down that are about chest height on me at 5'7", and there wasn't any foothold to help me get up that chest high rock, and so I ended up taking my pack up and pushing it up above and then climbing up. So I was a bit frustrated with that mobility and flexibility score. So there you have it. That was the end of my 6-week block of elevation and summit training. Oh, thank you for hanging in there. We are almost done. We are down to the final block, block 11. And this block is all about multi-day hike training. And I did 3 multi-day hikes, or I should say I will have achieved 3 multi-day hikes because I'm midway through that block at the moment. I've just returned a couple of days ago from the first of the 3 hikes. They're all on the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk. And so I've just returned from doing a 4-dayer. The first 2 nights, beginning of 3 days, I had Nikki from Gnarly Adventures join me, and we had an incredible koala encounter, which was just phenomenal. And then I have a week at home at the moment where I'll continue doing some laps of Mountain and Gungun, and also walking from home along my riverside track. But then I'll do a 6-dayer on the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk. So that means that I complete the walk and then I keep walking. So basically you just keep walking. And then the plan at this stage, the final 3rd multi-dayer, will be an 8-day on the Sunshine Coast Hinterland Great Walk. So that will be a total of around 150 to 160 kilometres and carrying 8 days worth of food. Now that last one, or the middle one of those might change a bit due to work constraints that are, it's hard when you're training for a long distance hike like the Te Araroa Trail to fit everything in, the complexities of fitting training, work, normal life, your, in my case, my beautiful mountain man, family, grandson, all of those extra things. It's hard to fit it all in. So the last 2 hikes, one of them might need to change a little bit. I might end up doing, instead of the 6-dayer, I might end up doing a 4-dayer, but the last one will definitely be an 8-dayer, because I want to have that amount of time out with my pack, with my body, to make sure that everything's still progressing really well. Yes, my goal with those 3 multi-day hikes, well, the last one, when I finish that 8-day hike, I don't want to have any more than a 2-week gap between that last day of hiking and the first day on the walking in the South Island of New Zealand along the Te Araroa Trail. And nutrition is something that I've been really focusing on. I don't think I've got time in this video to go into it, so I might have to do a separate video, but part of my strategy, just really quickly, was to put on about 12 kilos of weight, which is really hard for me to do. Have done that. That's part of my strategy, but I'll go into that more in another video. But anyway, I hope you found some of this information useful for you if you're thinking of doing a complex multi-week hike, maybe the Australian Alps walking track, or a bigger backpacking trip, maybe in the United States, maybe doing the Tour de Mont Blanc, something like that, maybe something in England, or like me on the Te Araroa Trail. So thank you so much for watching. And as I said, pretty much next you're probably going to see the Mount Cordeaux and Bear Rock and Morgan's Walk Hike.
Life is a winding road.
Bye for now.
No telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights. Won't stop for traffic lights.